Good afternoon, everybody. This is Vernon Jones here on the Justice Cast with my producer Caleb and his co-partner in crime, the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, Mr. Itzael, and we are happy to be with you here on a Wednesday afternoon, August the 26th. Lots to talk about today, and before we get into things, we first want to just pause. Our community over at North High School, the North High School Vikings, going through a very difficult season right now. Experienced the loss of two classmates over the last month, and we just want to pause and just let them know that we are sending our love to them. Had a chance to communicate with the leadership over there and want to just express our complete solidarity with the community of North High School. I've been where they are, and it is hard losing students. It's hard when you lose students any kind of way. So our hearts go out to them. We want them to know that we are standing with them and we are here for them. And we are all experiencing Viking pride today. And we stand with the North High School Vikings and that leadership team, the student body, the families, and the community of North High School. Just want them to know that, want them to know that we appreciate them, we love them, and that in times like this, I know that there's always this tendency by the system to make you quickly, move on quickly, kind of like get back to the routine of things. And one of the things that we were talking about in a cohort that I'm in is just that we don't grieve properly in the United States. We don't grieve properly, and it's always like, hey, some tragedy happened, shake it off and get back to work. And really, the body does, the mind does, the heart needs to grieve, and mourn. And so we want to just sit with North High School as they go through that and let them know again that they have a family here that also stands with them. So North High School, we're with you, and the community, we also are with you. So just words cannot even begin to express everything that we are feeling about that today. So I am also wanting to shout out. I didn't ever think that I'd be lifting up this towel, but I yesterday got a chance to. I don't know if you can see that. You see that? Yeah. Got to go to back to school night in Aurora at Hinckley High School. Some of our shift fellow leads that attend Hinckley High School invited us to come on out. We actually had a good time at Hinckley with the team there and with the students there, and really had a good time back to school. They are now the Hinckley Thunder, right? And so they say Thunder on top. That's the thing that's their slogan. So they're always out there doing that. So thank you again, Hinckley High School, for having us. Thank you, Aurora Public Schools, for having us out yesterday. We'll be coming to a back-to-school night or a family teacher conference night near you soon. We got some other places on the calendar, so we're looking forward to sharing in those events with students and families and educators. A lot of good stuff going on at Hinckley. Caleb and Itzael. Next time I'll take you guys with me. You look so excited, Itzael. Next time we'll take you guys with me. We got some good stuff, especially around some of our work that our shift fellows are doing around youth mental health and wellness, looking at the academy model that they use at Hinckley High School, and how each academy there has an AP, social worker, and some other folks assigned to that academy, and they grow up with the students, and they loop up with them. So if they start with them in ninth grade, they walk them all the way through their senior year. Helps to build relationship density, and helps to build some just some great connections. And so got to see that model live at Hinckley. They have an amazing principal there. She is the one of the principals of the year, recognized as a principal of the year. So she's doing great things there. Had a great conversation with her again. And yeah, so shout out to Hinckley, right? My scholars that are part of the Hinckley community always try to tell me that Hinckley is the best APS high school. They know I always argue that all the time, but I will give them their props when they are due, and they are due their props. So thank you, Hinckley, again, for the hospitality and for having us at back to school night. So today, we are continuing to look at all things education, and specifically today, we are looking at what I'm calling the egos and excuses in education, and As we talked about our case study the other day, Polaris and um, Aurora Quest. Let me tell you, guys, guess what? Caleb and Itzel, guess what? Guess what?
What?
Are you get? Let's try it again. Guess what?
I won $1 million.
No, you did not win $1 million, but almost, 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 almost. We're gonna get to go and visit Aurora Quest.
Oh, nice.
Nice. Got a outreach from the principal and folks who listen to the podcast, and we got an invite to go and visit Aurora Quest.
When are we going?
Well, I'll let you know that, and we'll go. And she goes, they can't wait to see the people behind the curtain and behind the production because you guys stay off camera for witness protection purposes. So,
Exactly.
yeah, but we're so excited about that. Aurora
So
Quest, thank you for the
mysterious.
invite. We can't wait to come out and visit the school and see it live and see what's happening there. So, Polaris, if you want us to come visit, we'd love to do that too. So, Polaris out there, shout out to you guys. If you want us to come and visit, we'd gladly come and see the great things that are happening there at Polaris. So, today we are talking about the Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy, the Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to take some time here today. This may take, we're going to take a good hour to go through all this, and we're going to go through it piece by piece and talk to you about this school that is currently existing, and we're going to talk to you about it in a lot of different contexts. But what I'm not going to do is forget that all of the history that comes with when we talk about this school in Denver, right? So what this is today is it's not about just a story of if a small high school concept worked or not. We're looking at this as a time for us to look at shared responsibility and what happens when a community demand, governance, district leadership, school practice, family choice, and beloved community do or do not remain aligned. What happens when there was alignment at one point and something there becomes misalignment happens, and if that misalignment is not corrected, how do students pay the price? We'll be talking about that today. Um, and yeah, all the things. And if you're following us online and you're on the YouTube, you can definitely chat in the chat, and we'll see those comments. If you're on Facebook, you can do that as well, and we'll be responding as quickly as we can, if we can. But we're going to dive right in. Again, this is our today looking at the formation, the success, the disruptions, and the present crossroads that we are seeing at the Robert S. Smith STEAM Academy. And again, my large title of today was the egos and the excuses in education, because I think throughout this whole thing, that's what we will see. So let me give you this. So we know from a historical standpoint. Let's do this. Let me give you the central question today. It's Ion Caleb. The central question that I'm asking today is: when a school struggles, which part of the compact has failed? So you guys have heard us talk about our compact, and our compact includes governance, it includes leadership, it includes um, practitioners, it includes families, and it includes beloved community. All of those pieces we believe are essential to ensure that a school is successful and that that success is sustained, right? And we feel like where that doesn't happen, there is a failure of each component of the compact, because they do not work independently. They work interdependent. So they depend on each other. So a failing somewhere else is kind of like those, your lungs depend on your heart, right, Itzel? You let that heart stop, bro. I don't care how good your lungs are. Battle's over, right? You let those lungs stop. I don't care how good your heart is. Battle's over. All of these critical parts move together, and so we say the same thing about schools. And when we look at the early formation of Robert S. Smith, let me tell you, when I look at the early formation of Robert S. Smith, what we know is that Robert S. Smith emerged because of advocacy that was being led by the Warriors for High Quality Schools. I think some of us who know the storyline of this those folks that were in that were Mr. Brandon Pryor and Mrs. Samantha Pryor, and Gabe Lindsay were some of the main community folks who were leading this charge. And it was based on their analysis, their experiences, and they're concerned, just like many of us in the community were, about the outcomes of black students in Denver public schools, right? Let me just say this part as a little pause that we're still concerned about the outcomes of black students in Denver public schools. We are still concerned as we looked at CMAS, as we look at PSAT, as we look at SAT, as we look at even still, we don't talk about this much, but we used to talk about remediation rates or we talk about readiness rates. We used to talk about that a lot in my day, and we don't talk about it as much. But the reality is, we are giving diplomas out to young people, black kids who are not ready to be successful, and then their persistence when they get into a college campus is lower than it should be because not because they're not capable, because we did not prepare them to be successful. So the root cause of all this is this: the Warriors for High Quality Schools, like many other community orgs, were raising their voices, and Warriors for High Quality School brought forth this concept of the Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy. At the time, that it was not named at the point when they first started, but it was this concept that drew inspiration from HBCUs, or historically black colleges and universities. That's why Itzael joined a frat, because he wanted to be connected to HBCU world. What? You step? You do your lines? Okay,
I'm
all
not.
right.
I'm not part of the D9 though.
I know you're not, because you were denied. That's why you're not a
That's
D9.
not true.
Because you're okay. All right. Anyways, so it got rooted. It was rooted in the same spirit, the same. I would say the same high bar of academic excellence and social impact, and all of the things that come from HBCUs. Those of us who tout them as not a secondary school option, but they are equally as valuable for the secondary college education of young people. That's what this was rooted in. Like, hey, we know what success looks like. We know what black excellence looks like. We know what young people would like to be exposed to. And so this idea came up, and it began to take some root. It began to take some formation. And I think at this point it's very important that I think people understand, because it's going to, again, remember, in our compact, we're going to talk about governance, leadership. We're going to talk about practitioners. We're going to talk about families. We're going to talk about community. And so everything I'm talking about is going to be in those buckets. And so a early bucket that I need folks to understand about this Robert F. Smith discussion is an early bucket of who was there when this thing was being created. Who was there? Because when you create something, there are commitments that are made for you when you commit things, especially if you are committing in school. Now, I remember a conversation that I had as I was being asked about this, and I was asked by people, hey, what kind of school do you think we should form? And I talked to them about my experience at the time. I was talking about what my experience was like running a charter school, what my experience was like dealing with an innovation school, had done that, and then had talked to them about, hey, just a traditional model, right? Had been there as well. And so I helped folks understand, like, hey, if you want this kind of autonomy, if you want this kind of freedom, then this is what a charter school offers. And if you want an innovation school, this is what an innovation school does. And there's a difference, too, between innovation that is run like at the time, what the Northeast Denver Innovation Zone was being run like, or what currently the Luminary Learning Network is being, how it's being run and supported. So there was that difference. And then there was now district managed innovation, right? And so where Robert F. Smith landed was that they were going to become a innovation school that was managed by the district, right? So that's a critical piece that I don't think anybody needs to miss, right? There is a difference between a district developed and district managed school versus a charter school that gets started by founders, and those founders are very much involved in the formation, the day to day, and all of that. I've been there with founders. I think my one of my most recent recollections was when we helped to SOAR out in Green Valley Ranch, when we worked with those founders to found SOAR, and the processes that those founders went through, like, making sure the instructional model was this, making sure the MTSS model was this, making sure we had this service and that service and da 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 da, right? those founders went through that because that was the process by which you were founding a charter school. You were the founders, right? You were going through with that. In this concept, what you had was you had community again, Warriors for High Quality School, that brought forth this idea to the district. Great idea, and we'll get through that. We'll get through to the merit of that. But you had these folks who brought this forward, and then the district. It was decided that the district was going to take this concept and it was going to bring it to fruition. So at the point of approval, that's at what I would call the creation point of Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy, you had from a governance bucket, you had on the Board of Education, you had Ann Rowe, you had Barbara O'Brien, you had Happy Haynes, you had Lisa Flores, you had Jennifer Bacon, you had Angela Cobian, and you had Dr. Carrie Olson. This board is the board that approved the school application that became Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy, right? So that's like August of 2019, right? And so you move a little bit later, and so then you look at uh, from 2019 to 2021 is what I've laid out as in this case study. I've laid this out as what I would call the build period for Robert F. Smith, right? So you had um, in what I was saying, the governing year zero and the design phase that talked about also facility placement and startup conditions and all the preparations for opening, you had in that phase, you had these same people that were at the table. There were some changes that happened on the board. So again, we're talking about the governance bucket first. You had Carrie Olson. You had Jennifer Bacon, you had Angela Cobian, you had Barbara O'Brien, you had Ayante Anderson, you had Scott Balderman, and you had Brad Larvick, right? So that's up until 2021. You had these folks on the board. These are the folks who were overseeing the creation of this from a governance standpoint. We'll get into like the superintendents that were also there because again, that's the leadership standpoint. But that's where you were, right? There's some commonalities that you will find that there's a common thread through August 2019 until recently. One of the common names that you'll see in our case study is Dr. Carrie Olson. She was there from the creation, and she was this there most recently, and so there's a common thread. There's a common governance thread when you look at that. So open. Then we get into open early 2021, 2023. You had some changes on the board that happened. Dr. Olson is still there. Current president Sochi Gaitan, Michelle Quattlebaum, Scott Esserman, again, Ayante still there, Scott Baldwin, Brad Larvick, and then later you had Charmaine Lindsay, who became like an interim, not an interim, but she was what she filled the spot because Reverend Brad Larvick no longer lived in the district. He got changed church assignments, and that caused him to move, and so then his seat opened up, and a lot was going on here. 2023 was like the early implementation of the school, facility stuff. There was some community conflict and some enrollment instability that was going on during that time period. But again, those were the folks who were governing. And then we get to 2025. Again, Dr. Olson's still there, Director Gaitan still there, Michelle Quattlebaum, Scott Escherman, Kimberly Sia joins the board in 2023. Marlene De La Rosa joins in 2023. John Youngquist joins in 2023. And so this board then inherited the enrollment and financial sustainability challenge while the school reported some areas of improvement during that time period. And then we are currently where we are, and you have, again, names on the board: Gaitan, Sia, De La Rosa, Youngquist, and now you have Monica Hunter, DJ Torres, and Amy Klein-Moak. And this current board faces questions about the future, and that's where we are today, right? And so we are there today. And I said this point as we were advertising today's broadcast, is that the governance responsibility does not reset after an election. I think this is if we don't hear anything else, this is a key point. Governance responsibility does not reset after an election. New directors may not have made the original decision, but they inherit stewardship of the district's commitments, institutions, students, and the consequences of prior governing choices, right? So you get elected, and it's not as if you are being elected to a blank slate. You're not being elected to a blank whiteboard. There are things that are already happening in the district. This district that is much older than all of us has been existing and it has been doing things and it has made commitments to schools, to communities, to people, and most importantly to students. And new board members have to come on and understand, okay, hey, let me, before I decide to, change everything, let me actually understand what the heck's going on. Because in order for you to be able to act, you got to understand, hey, what are the commitments we've already made? What are the things we've already said we're going to do? What are the things that we have to uphold as a board? And so, um, you know, you look at it and say, okay, which board was responsible for creating the school? Which board was responsible for creating the conditions for success? Which board was responsible for correcting problems when those conditions were not working? And which board now owns the responsibility for deciding what happens next, right? That's part of it, right? If governance creates the conditions, Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy allows us to examine if those conditions across time were conditions that were focused on them being successful, right? You look at the create stage. It's a question: why should the school exist? Build. What does it need to? What does it need to succeed to sustain it? What must change when the design encounters reality? What happens when you don't hit enrollment targets? What happens when you don't have the facility? What happens when you get a bond that passes and you are rehabbing Montbello High School and you're bringing all the schools in the far northeast that were decimated and put into small schools, and now you're bringing them back to a large, um, comprehensive school model. What happens when that changes? Okay, I think we're back. Had some tough technical difficulties there, but we got them solved, and I think people are trying to keep the truth off the air. It's like, oh, what the heck, right? Anyways, we're back to this, back to where we are with Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy. So you got the board context of everything there, but I want to also say that it matters. So that's the governance side of things, and the other thing that matters is leadership, right? In the leadership seat, when DPS approved the formation of the school in August 2019, was Dr. Susana Cordova, who is now our Commissioner of Education in Colorado. She was in the seat and she remained the superintendent through the school's design and year zero period, including the November 2020 board approval of the Robert S. Smith STEAM Academy shared campus placement and the December 2020 public launch of the STEAM Academy. The timing matters because Robert S. Smith STEAM Academy is not merely approved as another school. It was presented as a deliberately designed response to persistent inequities experienced by black students And as a school grounded in HBCU principles, blackness, inclusion, interdisciplinary learning, relationships, and community, it was supposed to be a solution to the challenges that were being faced by black students in the district, right? In December 2020, um, there was a communication that went out that talked about, Superintendent Cordova and her support of the school and the founding principal, Shakira Abney Wisdom, and all of that. It was all that was going on during that time. So Cordova, she left DPS before Robert S. Smith's team opened to students in August 2021. So the school therefore moved from approval and design under one superintendent into implementation under subsequent district leadership. Alex Marrero became superintendent in 2021, and he inherited responsibility for the school's launch era challenges, including enrollment, facilities, district community relationships, and long term sustainability, right? So here we go. We had we had a lot of changes in governance, as you saw that. And then we get here and we have leadership changes. You have a handoff from one superintendent, Dr. Cordova, to Dr. Alex Marrero. And the question of the compact would say is when a district approves an innovative community design school and publicly commits to its success, does that commitment belong only to the superintendent and the board that approved it, or does it become an institutional obligation that subsequent administrations and boards inherit, right? So, Dr. Cordova and those boards that were with her made this commitment, and then Dr. Marrero comes along in May of 2021 and begins to take over the leadership. I don't know who gave thumbs down there. Began to take over the leadership of the district. Those things would seem to be that now the board that is and the superintendent that is now has the responsibility of ensuring success of Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy, right? So when you look at this, the timeline though, in 2022, we saw that there were facility disputes, there was district and community conflicts related to Robert S. Smith STEAM Academy, there was enrollment instability, there was leadership transition, and then there were efforts to stabilize the school, right? Those are real things. Those things played out in the press. Those things played out on other places like Brother Jeff's show. Those things played out and everywhere. And so we saw those things. Community saw those things. Never really sometimes understanding what was happening because we were not on the inside of those conversations, but we understood. We saw the conflict publicly. We had the opportunity to talk with families who were close friends, still are close friends of ours, who were in the middle of it. We definitely, folks know I have relationships with folks who have worked at Robert S. Smith STEAM Academy, and it was to I think be fair, it was difficult for all parties. It was difficult for staff. It was difficult for parents. It was difficult for students, and it was just again not what helps a school be successful. And so all of this that was going on, and then we get to 2025, 2026. We see there are some changes in leadership again, and you've got different voices that came in, and we even see in some recent results at Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy that there were some improvements that were happening. That were happening based on some of the efforts that were taking place in the school. So when I talk about performance, though, what was going on at Robert F. Smith when it came to performance? Like 2022, it was too brand new, too small to get data. 2023 on an improvement plan got 57% of the points. That was actually 2023 was its strongest, output though on the performance framework, and then in 2024 was on an improvement plan. 2025 on an improvement plan, and then just recent data, we saw some good growth and some good lift. I think if the data that I remember reading right, 68 students that were participating in that test definitely saw some improvement there. Right. The thing though that I think is critical, like families, this in 2025, 2026, the students that were at Robert S. Smith STEAM Academy, they had 38 ninth graders, 25 10th graders, 11 they have 13 11th graders and 15 12th graders for a total of 91 students. Now, why does that matter? Why do those numbers matter to me? Because in the original enrollment projections planned by DPS and the startup, now these again, these were plans that were inherited. These were plans that were established by different boards and different superintendent, but these things were still the plans, right? And so um, there was a plan that the school enrollment would be 125 in 2021-22. It would be 250 in 2022-23. That would be 375 in 23-24. That it would be 500 24-25, and it would be 500 in 25-26. Those numbers matter because right now we're looking at, as we look at last year's numbers, it was 91, right? And so there was a those everybody knows students equate to dollars, right? And so when you are planned to have a certain enrollment and you don't hit that enrollment, then what you do is the district then begins to supplement funding because you are not hitting those enrollment numbers. And I think if you look at a CDE report, um, the numbers were like total spending. I'm looking at this again, and this is 2025, 2020, no, 24, 25. Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy served 89 students, and for spending purposes, has had a total spending of $44,314 per student. $44,314 per student, right? And you're not going to get me to say, okay, yeah, well, I mean, we should be spending a lot more on per people, but the statewide average at that same time was 16,845. So there was a lot of gap being filled by other sources, right? So there's also startup funds that were also allocated that we do in Denver and most districts do when they start a new school. There are startup funds that are also allocated. So you put that on top of things. And so you're looking at that. At what point does the district's additional investment represent a reasonable commitment to giving a community designed school time to become sustainable? And then what point does continued support become financially unsustainable, right? This is what I think is folks are really grappling with right now. I don't think anybody is saying that the idea, the concept that we were trying to live out at Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy is a bad idea, is a bad concept. I think it could, this is me personally speaking, I think what we've learned a lot from Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy, we've learned a lot about what it could look like to have this commitment to Black excellence, what it could look like to create this culture, not just in one school, but across schools, where Black excellence is elevated, where there are genuine partnerships with HBCUs, where we have clear pathways and supports down those pathways to get kids into these universities where they can belong and become. I think we learned a lot about that from Robert S. Smith STEAM Academy. What the question is when you look at this from just let's pull away all the personalities, let's pull away all the egos and the excuses for a moment, and just look at this from a financial sustainability, right? Let me just say this: financial sustainability is not separate from what our education compact says. Governance determines the conditions and resource commitments, right? So there's got to be a point where governance says, hey, um, one, are we giving enough? And then two, um, how long can we supplement something and take from the larger bucket before a thing is no longer financially sustainable? Or it's unsustainable to continue to supplement at that level. I think those are the tough questions you have when you govern and lead. Is there are sometimes you know you just can't afford it, right? There's things that you just can't do because it's just not working. And the reason it's not working, again, our education compact would say the reason it's not working is because all those parts failed the kids at Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy. That the governance, the leadership, all of the parts did not move from superintendent to superintendent, from board to board, they did not all move, and not only just from superintendent to superintendent and board to board, the conditions of the ecosystem changed. I think what is not talked about is that when the decision was made to, reunite the Warriors at Montbello, when the decision was made to say, hey, we are going to make sure when the community, again, we talked about the community asking for Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy, but there's also a community that said, we want Montbello High School back. We want our high school back. It was closed. We want it back. We want it reconstituted. We want it to be vibrant. We want all those things going on, right? And so all of these things were connected. All of these things are moving parts at the same time. And so when that condition changed, when the condition in the far northeast changed, when the condition in northeast Denver changed, and you now have Montbello coming back. You remember it had been decimated, that thing, and everybody was meeting in these small schools, and now all of a sudden you were bringing these folks back, and now this Montbello that was divided up into all these schools now was becoming the comprehensive high school again, and so that changed the conditions that a Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy was operating under. Right? Maybe if that doesn't happen, they have more of a viable chance to grow to the 500. Maybe if there wasn't the demand of a DSST elevate, if there wasn't the demand of whatever, maybe they have the opportunity to grow. But the conditions of the ecosystem changed, and as the conditions of the ecosystem changed, I don't know if the support changed to say this school is going to be viable. I mean, I think I remember the Superintendent Cordova saying when it was, hey, we're committed to the long-term success of Robert S. Smith STEAM Academy. Okay, well, what does that mean, right? The long-term success. Was the long-term success as long as she was superintendent, or was it a commitment of the district to say we are committed to the long-term success of Robert S. Smith STEAM Academy? And that's the uncomfortable thing right now is that I think people are dealing with is that, hey, when these things get passed from superintendent to superintendent, board to board, who's responsible, right? Who's responsible, right? So it's important that I think we understand that. Um, that we can look at the school and see some of the data that has come out recently, and we can say, look, there can be success, and there could still also be serious structural problems, right? There can be success, and there can still be real structural problems, right? A district can have legitimate sustainability concerns and still bear responsibility for conditions that contributed to those concerns. I think that is true too, that the district can be concerned about legitimate sustainability and simultaneously bear the responsibility for the conditions that contributed to the concern, right? Low enrollment is one thing. Low enrollment is definitely, I mean, I am one that just like, you have to have, I mean, if you're trying to run a healthy high school, you've got to have enough students so you can have enough course offerings, so you can have enough staff to really give kids the meaningful experience that they deserve, right? So it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. Growth and proficiency, when we look at that, are different measures. A responsible conversation should examine both. When we look at Robert S. Smith, kids are growing, but what is the proficiency? What is the college readiness that we see there? And I think that we hear this like Warriors for High Quality School was the community voice that was loud at the time of creation, and they were leading this charge, right? And I think what we also have to understand in our compact, community power must be sustained through implementation and through sustainability, right? You cannot be successful in our view at any school unless you have a healthy, engaged community, right? I think that when I look at this, you could look at every area of our compact and you could say there is ownership that should be had by every part of the compact, right? There's everybody that should be able to speak to the fact that, hey, if it's not about, again, the kids failed, it's about adults asking ourselves, how do we fail the kids? How did we get here as governance? How do we get here as leadership? How do we get here as practitioners? How do we get here as families? How do we get here as a community? And boy, there's a lot of egos in education. There's a lot of excuses in education, and I've had 3 meetings today alone that have just set me on fire, like frustrated fire, with the adults in the ecosystem, specifically the ecosystem of Denver Public Schools. And in all 3 of these interactions today, I felt like there was no freaking ownership from adults for what they are supposed to be responsible for. I really felt like there was just the continued finger pointing, the continued blaming this lane and blaming that lane and blaming this lane, instead of saying, you know what, we all need to pull our heads out of our behinds and we need to do right by kids. Right? Now, and that's the kind of thing that I'm expecting. That's the kind of thing that we push for. That's the kind of thing that kids deserve, is not everybody to play the blame game. But okay, sometimes the honest thing you can say is, yeah, you know what? That thing did not become what it could have been because all of us dropped the ball. That when there were transitions of leadership from superintendent to superintendent, some communications got dropped. When there were new board members that got elected, there were new priorities that came up, and this one kind of fell by the wayside. Or when the landscape changed and we reopened our comprehensive high school out there, and we created we had a facility move of this school, and then we kind of like changed, not kind of, but we changed their geography and we changed all of those things have to be owned, and then they have to be owned, and we have to learn and say, okay, we're not going to make those mistakes again. We're not going to make those mistakes again. And what is that? You're telling me I got
We had
something?
a comment on Facebook
Okay.
asking, can Robert F. Smith become a part of Montbello High School, Comprehensive High School?
Who's that? Is that a person who said that?
Shirley Scott.
Shirley Scott. Shirley Scott asking Vernon Jones, can Robert F. Smith become a part of Montbello High School? I think that is I think that's a hard question not to answer, because I think this, again, I believe the spirit of what Robert F. Smith wants to create as a school, to elevate Black excellence, to create spaces where there's connectedness to HBCUs, there's connected to culture, and I think that can happen at every school, right? I honestly think that you could have a Robert F. Smith initiative, HBCU initiative that raises this at every school. Um, if you're talking about a school within a school, don't know. I would have to understand. I would have to have those leaders talk that through and say, what does that look like? But again, I mean, it's not that we don't have models like that in Denver Public Schools. I talked about that before at a community meeting that the district had. I think it was in April. As we were looking at, I think it was GW has another a smaller kind of school that meets in it. But even then, you have to have the numbers, right? You have to have the numbers to sustain that. So I think from a programmatic standpoint, definitely it could be embedded into a lot of schools. It could be an HBCU pathway. What does that look like? What does an HBCU pathway look like in every high school, every comprehensive high school? So therefore, you reach more kids than what we were reaching at Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy. But again, I mean, I honestly, when I talked to some people about, hey, does it look like, could it fit at a manual? Could it fit at a Montbello? Could it fit? I mean, do they align? So yeah, that's definitely something that, again, if there was this commitment to it, if there was this real ownership of it, and you could create a sustainable thing. Like, yeah, anything can be sustainable if, again, you got governance, leadership, families, educators, and beloved community behind it. I think anything can work anywhere if we're willing for it to work. But I don't think that it's just gonna be successful on its own. So I think that, yeah, I mean, there's nothing off the table in my view. But I think what I know that's off the table is we can't fail kids, right? We can't have programs that are not supported, with governance, leadership, um, the right educational staff, um, parents as partners, families as partners, and the beloved community behind it. We just cannot create situations where that's not the case. And to sadly, it's not, it's the norm. Sadly, it's the norm, and that's the hard part. Um, let me say this: academic achievement demands accountability from leadership and leadership in practice. Graduation attendance and retention data require us to recognize where students are succeeding. The enrollment collapses raise a different set of questions about governance, district strategy, facilities, community, trust, recruitment, investment, and whether DPS created and sustained the conditions necessary for the school to reach viable scale. Right? And those are things that we should talk about. Those are learnings that we should talk about in this case study. Because let me tell you this, there will be other ideas that come forward that we should learn from this Robert F. Smith STEAM experience and what's going on there right now and say, hey, how do we not make the same mistakes? When community brings forward an idea and we are going to entertain it and we are going to say, hey, you know what? That might work. Well, good. Then let's make it work. And when it's not working, let's be quick to say that was a great try, but it's not working. Let's be quick to move away from something that is not that we think is not working. And again, I'm not saying that about Robert F. Smith's STEAM. I'm saying that about the education compact that I believe should have supported Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy. And let me just say this again: the whole point of this broadcast was like egos and excuses in education. Adult egos do not help children, right? The tit for tats back and forth between grown people, right? That doesn't help young people, right? The blasting and shaming of individuals on social media, the lack of professionalism, it doesn't help young people, right? And I think the lack of clarity around roles and expectations, and school leaders feeling like pressed and bullied, and like they can't lead in the ways that they know are best for kids when it comes to academics, when it comes to being academically proficient. That stuff is not acceptable, and I don't care who's does it. Right? It just doesn't work that way, right? If you're going to build a school with the district, you're going to build a school as a community person, and you're going to bring your idea to the district, then you have to fall in line with the education compact, which says governance must work together, leadership must work together, professionals must work together, families must work together, and the beloved community must work together. You don't just get to call the shots by yourself individually. Everybody's got to move together. And again, we would say that in this case study that it's education compact failure that failed students. That all parts of this thing failed students, and so we have to acknowledge that part, and we have to say that hey, we can do much better than what was done here. I definitely again look at the entire compact and say the reason why we are at a struggle state, while we are at a critical moment for Robert S. Smith STEAM Academy, is not one thing, it's not one person, it's the entire education compact in that area. We all have to examine ourselves and say, okay, what could we have done better? What should we have done better? Right? And that's it. I mean, that's hard. That's hard, right? This is hard. Like, we're getting ready to have hard questions too in Denver about other places where we have to make tough decisions, and we cannot be afraid to make those tough decisions. right? But we cannot make those tough decisions in siloed. We have to have the compact, right? When you were talking, oh, we're going to close the school. Well, great. Let me talk to the governance. Let me talk to the leader. Let me talk to the practitioners. Let me talk to the families. And then let me talk to the beloved community. And let's move together so that the thing that we choose to do and the thing we choose to create is something that is better and best for students, right? This is not our time to play adult politics. It's not our time to placate to adult egos. It's not our time to, make adults feel comfortable. It's not our time to say, well, blah, blah, blah. No, 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 right? It's time for us to say, hey, adults, kids are not reading at grade level. Hey, adults, kids are not graduating proficient or prepared for college. Hey, adults, while you were sitting there bickering, while you were sitting there going back and forth, we are looking at realities of 7.6% proficiency in English language arts and 6.9% proficiency in math at a school that I'm looking at right now in Southwest Denver. Come on, man. I don't have time for the adult egos and the adults' excuses. I don't have time for you to be having the same old arguments about traditional schools versus charter schools. There are 89,000 kids in Denver public schools who are expecting the folks that govern to govern well to create the conditions. There are 89,000 kids in Denver public schools who are expecting the leader, the superintendent, to set the culture and to build the community. There are 89,000 kids who are expecting the leaders of schools and the educators every day to create excellent learning experiences. There are 89,000 kids who are expecting families to be partners and co-creators in their schools. There are 89,000 kids who are expecting the beloved community of Denver to give a damn about what is happening in our schools. And that's the facts. And that is what we have to pony up as adults and start saying, hey, check your ego at the door. Check your excuses at the door, and let's deliver on the promises that we are making to students. I look at Robert S. Smith STEAM Academy, and a lot of us adults in the system should be apologizing to young people because we failed to deliver on our promise to them there. Right? There's and look, again, there are things happening there. Dr. Branch and the crew there have done some good work, and the team there. I was just talking with a former social studies teacher there last night when I was at Hinckley. He's now teaching at Hinckley, and there were good things being done there, just like there are at every school in Denver public schools. But just like I said earlier, you can have success in places where there are still systemic failures going on. You can experience, and we know that, we experience that. The point of the compact is, let's do this with intention. Let's deliver by design. Let's ensure that kids are thriving by design and not by chance, right? So when schools struggle, who's failing? When schools have to be closed, who's failing? When we see declining enrollment, what has changed? What is failing? And how are we responding to those things, right? And instead of just allowing these things, is there another question?
Yeah, we have another comment from Kimberly Grayson.
Oh, Kimberly Grayson.
She says, it was set up to fail from the beginning. I supported the leader from ground zero, and there was barriers in place at the beginning.
Yeah, and Grayson knows that there were barriers in place from the beginning. That's the point. That's the point. That if we are saying that we are committed to success of all students as a district, as the governors, the board, right? Again, as the board, as the superintendent, as the practitioners, as the families, as the beloved community, then those barriers that were in the way at the beginning should have been removed. And we should have done everything that we could have to remove those barriers. And if those barriers, wherever those barriers came from, right? That's the other thing. Like, let's own this part too as beloved community. Sometimes as beloved community, we have to check beloved community and tell beloved community, hey, you're not the superintendent. You're not the teacher. You're not the school leader. Stay where you are and do your thing the best you can do it, because that's what the Education Compact needs. We do not need folks in spaces creating unnecessary barriers and burdens and all of this kind of stuff, because it's already hard enough. Because if you look at the data we've been looking at, those kids that hit Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy were not on grade level. Okay? That's why the school was started from its inception, because the Warriors for High Quality Schools said, hey, we're failing black kids. Well, great. Now let's put something together that has the right governance support, that has the right superintendent support, that has the right leaders and teachers in place, that has the families on board, and has a beloved community supporting it, and let everybody move together. That did not happen. And to Grayson's point, that's why we are where we are. And again, it is not a one lane failed and this lane did successful, because in our education compact, all of those lanes are interdependent. All of those lanes have to count on the other lane. They have to move with the other lane. And what we saw and what we are seeing is the result of education compact failure. And our children deserve better. They deserve that. If we're going to come up with a concept that is the HBCU pathway, the HBCU school that gives them an HBCU-like experience, it better damn well be like Morehouse or Spelman or North Carolina A&T. It better be like the good stuff at Howard. I know they got some challenges going on right now, but it better be like Langston. It better feel like that. It better have that level of pride in instruction. It better have that level of pride in what is being delivered in each classroom. It better have the resources. It better have the community support. It better have everything that we expect them to experience at an HBCU. And if we cannot give them that, then let's not promise it. And I think we can say that about every school. If we cannot promise excellence, then don't promise excellence. If we are not willing to do what it takes from a governance lens, from a leadership lens, from an instructional lens, from a family lens, from a beloved community lens, then let's not promise it. Yeah, but Grayson's right. She's been there. Look, she got some bruises too. We understand, right? It is very true what she said. It's very true what she said, Caleb. That from the beginning, it was not set up to be successful, and conditions changed. I think again the elephant in the room. We don't talk about when the Montbello High School decision was made to reconstitute Montbello High School, which was equally a priority of community. You had two conflicting things. How were you going to ensure that Montbello High School hit its enrollment goals while you also simultaneously were trying to balance the enrollment goals, the enrollment objectives of other schools that had flooded the ecosystem? Look, I lived this, bruh. Like, I lived this, right? I was at Manual, leading Manual. Then all of a sudden, the district started to open up all of these other smaller high schools around Manual High School. And I kept pushing back then to, again, Superintendent Bollesberg and saying, bruh, do you want Manual to succeed? Because if you do, then you wouldn't keep eating away at its enrollment. You turn Bruce Randolph, which was a 6.8, into a 6.12. You turn DCIS, which was a 6, into a 6.12. DSST Cole dropped in, and I could go on and on about all of the high schools that dropped in that area. So I understand how the system can just sometimes not be paying attention to all of the moves that it's making, and how some of those moves are not working together. You were creating this just chaos and competition unnecessarily in the ecosystem, and it's not getting you to where you say you want to get as a district. So, yeah. Oh, but that all comes down to governance, leadership, practitioners, families, and beloved community. All of that deals with that. If we can get the compact right, then necessary for us to, all of that is necessary for us to achieve what we need to achieve. Um, so, yeah, a lot there. I will continue to talk this. You might hear some music in the background. I got a special guest in the studio, um, watching a kids show behind the curtain. So, but yeah, so yeah, yeah, a lot there, and we'll talk more about it. But this has been today's episode. Today's episode talking about the egos and the excuses in education, looking at a case study on the Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy. And I'll say this: however we end up at Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy, I need us to end up in a place that works for kids. That's it. I don't care about the adult egos. I don't care about the adult excuses. What the children that are there, and what I understand, there are 10th, 11th, and 12th graders there. Um, Wherever we land there, it has to be the place that is best for students. And I don't care which adults are not happy about that. I want the students to be happy about it, and I want the parents to be happy about it, and I want everybody else to understand, hey, we can't do this again. We can't have community bring forth the vision. We can't say that we're partnering with community on it, and then all of a sudden, because we have transitions in superintendent leadership and board leadership, all of a sudden this thing that was a priority is no longer a priority. We can't have, shifting conditions in the ecosystem and then, not also simultaneously and say, okay, hey, what are the impacts on ABC? And how do we adjust for those impacts on ABC? Because, those are things that, look, we got a strategic plan that gets published. Not a strategic plan, but we got a strategic regional analysis that gets put out every year. And that strategic regional analysis should help inform proactively some of these decisions that we're making and saying, hey, wait, somebody should raise their hand on the board or raise their hand on staff or raise their hand somewhere and say, hey, this is going on, and I know that this thing is in motion, but this is about to happen, and then this is going to cause this, and this is going to be the domino. Are we prepared for the dominoes? Right? Instead of just allowing things to happen to community, allowing the continued educational trauma to happen to the same group of kids in the same communities. And that's what we got to do better, right? We got to do better to deal with, all of this. To me, a lot of this stuff that we are talking about today and have been talking about as we deal with data, it's avoidable. It is really avoidable if we are intentional about how we do things. If we redesign what things have been designed, I think these things are avoidable. But there is the pessimistic side of me that says, in some ways, the system just keeps doing what it was designed to do. It just keeps doing what it was designed to do, right? I just don't understand. And I'm going to wrap up on this today because I just don't understand how we can continue to look at proficiency data and act like, oh, that doesn't tell the whole story. It doesn't, but it tells a story. It's a very important chapter of the story, right? It's very important because you can't. As the case study we said with Polaris and Aurora Quest, you can't tell me that a school that is at, let's see, you can't tell me a school that's at 11%, a middle school. This is in my neighborhood again, middle school, my neighborhood. 11.3% proficiency in reading and a 12% proficiency in math. You cannot tell me that 11.3% proficiency in math and that 12% reading and that 12% proficiency in math is not going to show up at Montbello High School and begin to, again, put us back in the same cycle of concern that we've been at Montbello High School, right? You cannot send 88.7% of the people from this middle school onto Montbello High School and they are not reading at grade level. You cannot send 88% of those kids who are not proficient in math onto Montbello High School and then think that Montbello High School is going to work miracles and get those kids at the level of grade level proficiency that they're supposed to. That is a disservice to your high schools. And I've been there too, right? Literally. I've had people sending me ninth grade students at a third grade level, and as Mary Sam used to say to me, Vernon, they want you to work magic over there. Magic they can't even work. Now, we need to be paying attention to the data. We need to be paying attention to it from the start all the way through, and we need to be pushing ourselves as an ecosystem to say, how is our governance ensuring that children thrive? How is our leadership ensuring that students thrive? How is our instruction ensuring that students thrive? How are families ensuring that students thrive? And how are we as a beloved community saying, these are our schools, these are our children, and it is our responsibility to make sure they thrive. That's where I'm leaving it today. You can join us tomorrow. I'll do some more fussing over data. I still haven't gotten to, I thought I was going to get to middle schools today, but it's important for me to talk about Robert F. Smith. But we'll talk some middle schools tomorrow. And look, I haven't even got to college readiness. Haven't got to PSAT and SAT. But let me just say, this is the kind of stuff that we should be upset about. This is the kind of stuff that we should actually be at school board meetings about. This is the reason why sometimes, God bless her soul, if Jeannie Kaplan was alive, this is the kind of stuff that we'd be rallying outside of central office. These are the reason why you should be packing your school CSC meeting. This is the reason why it's more important. This is why it's important for parents to show up in spaces and say, hey, I'm at my school and it's 17% reading proficiency. It's 9% math proficiency. How can I help? How can I help? Yeah. Well, I'm Vernon Jones. This has been the Justice Cast. The egos and the excuses in education. Have a great afternoon.